Welcome back to Limbus Company, new identity overview and patch node analysis. This week, it's been 1 week since part 3 of Canto 7, so of course we're getting a story ID based on it with Priest Gregor, alongside some various changes, but mostly just bug fixes. So most of the thing today is going to be the actual new ID. And also, before we start, I wanted to plug a funny thing I'm going to be doing today, where I'm going to be carving Dante's face into a pumpkin for a jack-o'-lantern thingy. I'll be streaming that, tonight at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. Feel free to join in. But enough of that. Let's look at this new unit, this new Priest Gregor ID.
혈액바가 위대하다고 믿어 의심을 통시주고 있었지. 그게 얼마나 헛된 일인지. 이 흙뭉치 같은 물씨를 끈적여 있어. 피가 잔뜩 흘러넘치고 있어. 한 방울이라도 괜찮으니까 내게 줘. 어머니께서 여기서 자르신다 해도.
The Priest of MANCHALAND, Gregor. It's a 3-star. Gregor's continuing his trend of getting, a big story ID, or at least a story ID every season so far. He's gotten a 3-star every season as well, except for Season 2, where he only got a 2-star. But yeah, so he's getting another story ID. We'll have to see how this one goes. It's definitely very interesting. He's a Blood Fiend, so of course he's also got Blood Feast, as they've been doing. And he's using it a little bit differently than, Barbarotis was doing. He's got a few unique status effects. He seems to be a bit on the tankier side, a bit of a HP healing kind of tank. So kind of feels like something similar to a more modern G-Corp Gregor in that regards, right? A tank with a decent bit of self-healing shenanigans. So let's get into it, shall we? Starting out with the defensive skill, Fated Patience. Now he's got 2 unique status effects of his own, but one of them he only gains after he uses the defense skill. You can see here, this is a Lust Guard skill. Combat Star, at a high amount of HP, gain Bleed and activate Bleed up to a certain amount of times on self, just to get Blood Feast going a little bit. But if you're at low HP instead, you instead consume some Blood Feast and heal the same value as HP. So he can use Blood Feast to heal himself a little bit, and Combat Start, gain Ailing Heart. Now how Ailing Heart works is turn end gain stack, so he keeps on building up more and more of it. It seems like he needs to use his defense skill in the first place to get it started, but then it'll keep on going up over time. And he just gains a defense level based on the amount of Ailing Heart, and at lower HP he gets even more defense level, and he actually gains a way to heal by just doing damage at especially low HP with Ailing Heart. So I guess something similar to best example would be kind of something I don't know, Lantern Dawn, having, additional healing with her skill 3 when she's low HP, right? Wonder how his stagger thresholds are gonna work. We don't know that yet because they don't show that sort of thing. But if he does have, one stagger threshold, a low stagger threshold or something, and he can actually get the healing without needing to be staggered first, because that's the big downfall of, Lantern Dawn, right? If you want to get the funny additional coin on the skill 3 for more healing, you need to be below your first stagger threshold. We'll have to see exactly how much HP you need to be below to get the healing here, but more defense level up. There is a little bit of a trade-off for Ailing Heart, which we'll get to the passives, but it's relatively minor, that's for sure. It might be nice, depending on how strong this is, to just start each fight with a guard from him, just get Ailing Heart to build up, right? Especially longer fights. Moving on to the actual skills. So, similar to basically every Blood Fiend we've seen in MANCHALAND, he's got a status effect that stacks up to 10 and upgrades in power every 10. Bloodied Hand. At 10 plus Bloodied Hand converts to Bloodied Hand 2, at 20 plus converts to Bloodied Hand 3, assuming it's going to work like every other one, which it probably will. It seems to be a reoccurring trend here. And, so he just gains offense level up based on the Bloodied Hand. Simple enough. And also, Bloodied Hand 3, he gets a little bit more Rupture and Bleed on hit with base skills. This is a mixture of a Bleed and a Rupture unit. He seems like he might be decent for both, but not particularly excel at either. Although this is Gregor, so he's got ADD, so his Rupture, synergy is pretty notable, if nothing else. His skill 1, Sacrifice for the Family, 2 coin Gluttony Blunt skill. Gain aggro to the skill slot next turn. Of course, he's leading to the tank thing, so he's got a bit of aggro. Gain coin power based on bleed on target. Gain bleed. Unlike, Barbarotis, whose bleed gain is a conditional thing, he's always going to be gaining bleed on self, which seems like he might be able to do something with. I'm not fully sure. We'll have to see exactly how the self-bleed thing works out, because he definitely seems like a unit who can definitely benefit from, like, being able to stack Blood Feast by taking bleed damage on himself, then healing it back to a degree with his defensive skill and the like, but not fully sure. Yeah, gain additional bleed at a high HP. First coin inflicts bleed potency, second coin inflicts rupture potency, and gains bloodied hand. His bloodied hand isn't, Blood Feast dependent, it just straight up he gains it from attacking. Skill 2, Suffocating Guilt, 2 coin Pride Blunt skill. You can aggro the skill slot next turn, coin power based on bleed on target, gain bleed potency, and at a certain amount of Ailing Heart, consume Blood Feast, and then gain additional Blood Hand based on Blood Feast consumed. So you need to actually have Ailing Heart set up to some degree if you want to get a bunch more Bloodied Hand. So even for something like if you're trying to synergize with Rupture, it could definitely be beneficial to prop a defense early on to potentially get enough Ailing Heart to be able to build up your Bloodied Hand significantly faster, which is what it sounds like. However, if you don't have a lot of Ailing Hand, you just gain straight up Bleed and Bloodied Hand, so you still gain some Bloodied Hand. Assumably it's going to be a lot worse than if you had Ailing Heart, though. And you also have gained more Bleed Potency, so not fully sure. First coin inflicts Bleed Count, so that's already, these seems like a better Bleed Count stacker than Barbara Otis, right? Assuming it's going to be like a 2 or 3, which I feel like is pretty likely. It's unlikely to be just 1, I want to say. The skill 2 seems like it'll be Bleed Count neutral, although I say neutral, quote-unquote, bleed, it doesn't work that simply, because it's depending on the amount of coins the enemy has, but might be a decent, bleed count stacker. And yeah, second coin inflict Rupture Potency and gain Bloodied Hand. A lot of Rupture Potency, and with Bloodied Hand 3, he just inflicts additional Rupture with every single hit. So he's kind of got, a light talisman that doesn't take as much, it still takes a fair bit of setup, but, in a different sense with a Bloodied Hand, right? And now, moving on to skill 3, the Unforgivable Sin, 3 coin Lust Blunt skill. On hit of the skill, heal X% of the damage dealt, yeah. Deal more damage for every missing HP on self. Gain coin power of target as bleed. And now you consume every excess stack of Bloody Hand past X stack. Which is interesting, because I'm not sure exactly how that's going to work, right? If it's going to be every excess stack beyond, 20, then you'd never go down from Bloodied Hand 3. But if it's everything past, 10 or something like that, or even something like 15 or 5, some weirder number, then the skill 3 would have a big downside with having you, have to get your Bloodied Hand back up in order to do it. But you also heal HP based on how much you consume, and you gain coin power and reuse the final coin of the skill if you had enough Bloodied Hand. Definitely seems like it could be useful in that regard, making this into effectively a 4-coiner. Gain Bleed, of course, once again. He's got a lot of self-bleed gain. Assumably it's going to be, it might be, decent bits of potency, but, not, any count or anything, depending on how they do this, right? Which definitely sounds like an issue for certain fights, because if your bleed count has been stacked by, the enemy you're going up against, and you keep on stacking more potency with all of your skills, because all this guy's skills have bleed potency gain on self. So it seems like that definitely could be an issue under certain circumstances, but his bleed's pretty high, but he could definitely benefit from it to some degree. I'm just curious how good he's going to be in Canto 7 itself. Be after attack, heal X% HP on self. First coin gains Bloodied Hand. Second coin inflicts Bleed Count and Rupture Count. Now, if this is decent numbers, this could be really good. It's only on a skill 3, so it's not something you can spam too much, but having another skill that can be pretty good at setting up both Bleed and Rupture, definitely interesting. Bleed and Rupture is like a hybrid mechanic, really doesn't exist. I'm pretty sure the only idea that's got both is Rabbit Heathcliff, and even then calling him, good for Bleed or Rupture is pretty comical, given how he's just got a little bit of potency of each. Maybe there's another name forgetting that has a bit of both, but I don't think so. If so, it's probably some random, bait launch ID or something. I don't know. And then the third coin inflicts a little bead potency and rupture potency. And this is the coin that gets reused, so unfortunately it's not the second coin that gets reused. If so, that could have been really good with stacking even more bleed count and rupture count at high bloodied hand. But either way, it definitely seems good. Moving on to the passives, of course, he's got Blood Feast, as most Blood Fiends do. It's not anything new, it's just saying, Blood Feast goes up when this unit exists in the battlefield. His actual passive, Self-Destructive Dedication, very interesting. Heal X minus Ailing Heart SP for the allies with least SP, excluding self or allies that are panicked or corroded. So this is the one downside Ailing Heart seems to have. The more Ailing Heart you have, the less SP you heal for allies. We're not sure how much SP this is going to be. This is almost definitely going to be a Resonance passive. It's going to be something close to, Whistles, right? Something like Whistles being it so you heal SP for 2 allies. This is probably going to be maybe more SP, maybe 20 minus Ailing Heart for 1 ally with least SP. With the downside of compared to that being, well, it's only 1 person compared to 2. Or maybe it'll be easier to trigger. Maybe it'll only be like a 2 resonance thing. Maybe like a 2 Lust Resonance, or like maybe they won't do Lust Resonance in general. It might be Lust Resonance again though, just simply because Barbarotis also is a Lust Res, and they might do that bit for all the Blood Fiends, but I'm not fully sure. But also, in this encounter, when the unit takes damage, it brings their HP down to X, nullify that damage, and the unit's HP cannot drop below X for the turn. Assume the X is going to be like 1 or something super low. He's got Unrelenting. Definitely not something I was expecting, that's for sure. I don't think the actual priest had Unrelenting, but I'm pretty sure he didn't. Definitely works really well. If you have like stupid amounts of bleed, you might be able to just get through all of it quickly and not die, then be able to heal back up to some degree. It's probably going to be similar to the Unrelenting on Blade Lineage Merceau, in the sense that, well, you need the Resonance passive to trigger it. Although if it is a Lust, like 2-3 Resonance, something along those lines, which seems pretty likely, then it might be pretty easy to trigger on his own team if you're running him for Bleed, Blood Fiend type shenanigans. Definitely seems like it'll be interesting, though, that's for sure. I was not expecting him to straight up get Unrelenting on top of all this sort of stuff. I don't know. And then his support passive, Don Quixote Hardblood Art 6 Whip, when I have the lowest HP percentage, heals X HP on hit, and if the target hit by said ally had bleed, heal a little bit more HP. It's another HP healing Gregor support passive. It'll probably be Lust owned, might be decent. It'll definitely be a trade-off from the other ones. It'll be based on, like, the situation at hand, right? That's for sure. Interesting for Gregor to get another one like this, but I assume it's to make up for, the fact that Linton Gregor's support passive is really bad. And then you really just want good IDs to have good support passives in general, since chain battles exist, so you want somebody to have good support passive and good effect on your team. So it works out. But yeah, that is Priest Gregor. Definitely a very interesting unit, that's for sure. He's leaning into the tanky stuff more than I was expecting. I was expecting, Dulcinea Rodion to eventually be like the super tanky one, but she'll probably lean onto the support more. And either way, it's definitely interesting. It makes sense. It fits Gregor a lot to get a proper, healing tank, since the only proper one he had. The only healing tank he had was G-Corp, who really wasn't tanky enough to do good with it. This unit might be able to make good use out of, like, Lantern, make good use out of, like, AEDD, that sort of stuff. He's probably not going to make particularly good use out of Garden of Thorns, just because Garden of Thorns isn't particularly good. But if nothing else, it's a Lust Res focused ID to some degree, so who knows? But yeah, that is Priest Gregor. Moving on to the actual patch notes, it's a pretty standard time, right? We're getting the new identity target section. Rodion is beginning, who, doesn't really have anything too special. Rodion hasn't ever gotten anything event-related, surprisingly, so she doesn't actually, like... It's not like she's getting, you can get, like, any of the event stuff from this pull, but if you need a Rodion ID, she's got some options, that's for sure. She's definitely one of the people who's got some questionable options, but most of her 3 stars are decent, at least, right? Like, Liu, Rose Banner are, like, decent IDs, especially for the teams. DHE Deviat can be pretty strong. DHE especially. Deviat can do some solid damage, though. People sleep on it a little bit, but it's definitely pretty good damage here, especially with chain battles existing, because you can just replace her with someone new when her time runs out. And then Kurakuma's rough, but it's her best unit for bleed now. Will probably change. Doesn't matter too much, though. Bug fixing improvements. Been a lot of various bug fixes. They fixed the issue where you can't use supports, support units for the story dungeon now. And that's really the only big change they seem to be making for the story dungeon, right? Like, they're not actually nerfing anything as far as we can tell, which is cool. Glad to see that they're confident in where it is. I think if nothing else, support units should make it a lot easier for people who are struggling, because you can just grab like a Faust with Fluid Sac or something from a friend if you get too desperate, right? Support units in general feel like a good way to help with some of that sort of thing. Just because they can make it so even if you don't have some strong stuff, you can get a little bit more strong stuff, that's for sure. Feels like it's usually beneficial, mostly for balancing, although you have a support unit for the first few canters of the game, and you can just breeze through comically easily. That's how levels work, though. Yeah, a bunch of other random fixes here and there. Nothing else that was, like, too notable, that's for sure. Yeah, more bug fixes, that sort of thing. Right. Some known issues are interesting, that's for sure. I'm not going to go into this stuff too much, because it's mostly pretty minor stuff. The support thing's really the only major bug fix they were doing this time. Otherwise, there was a lot of random things here and there. Nothing else too much worth a note, although I might be skimming over something important. Who knows? I don't think so, though. And, of course, 300 Lunacy. Yahoo! But yeah, I think Priest Gregor looks pretty cool. We're going to see how he works in action. I don't know if he's going to be like a meta-changing Gregor unit. I think he's going to be like another pretty solid Gregor 3-star that really isn't anything too insane, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm underestimating him. Another tanky unit's always appreciated, especially with modern content really rewarding units that have both good tank and offense to be able to deal damage without dying instantly to the sheer number of unbreakable coins everyone's taking. And healing in general is pretty nice. Even something like Barbara Otis, who isn't very tanky, like particularly, her healing makes it so she can definitely fend her own in those sort of situations. So it's getting a tanky unit who's got some healing, definitely nice. We haven't really gotten a lot of HP healing focused tanks. I think the last one who got like decent HP healing stuff was probably Lantern Dawn, really, right? You had stuff like the T-Corp IDs with Golden Time, that sort of thing, but Golden Time's like a one-time use thing. It's not super big. Most tanks have focused on like shield or defense level or like now like clashable guards, that sort of stuff. So it'll be cool, that's for sure. I think it'll be nice. But anyways, that will be all for this time. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!